Welcome back to Rowing Friends Podcast. Kate and I have a special guest for you. Today's conversation is with Tim Giarrusso, a leader, educator, and community builder who has spent decades strengthening organizations and the people inside them. Tim recently retired after a career that spans 28 years in the for-profit sector and 16 years in the non-for-profit world. He is the founder of Interference Consulting and has led complex organizations through growth, change, and long-term financial stability. As CEO of Human Technologies, Tim was challenged to lead the organization to full financial independence. Under his leadership, the organization not only met that challenge, but expanded employment for people with disabilities and strengthened its role in the community. During his time as Chief Operating Officer at the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired and Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, revenues grew by more than 50% and employment doubled to over 700 people. Tim holds a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Engineering from Rochester Institute of Technology, a master's degree in organizational development from American University, and an executive MBA from Duke University's School of Business. He's also spent 25 years teaching leadership, management, and product development at RIT and earned his executive coaching certification from University of Rochester's Warner School of Education in 2013. In this episode, we talked to Tim about his role as co-founder of Rochester Inclusive Community Rowing, known as RCIR. Tim shares how RCIR began in 2008 as a volunteer-driven program with a simple goal: use rowing to build confidence, connection, and community for people who are often left out of traditional sports settings. We dig into RCIR's mission and how it serves veterans, people with visual impairments, and individuals with developmental disabilities. Tim explained how RCIR's model, no one pays and no one gets paid, thrives, and why the program focuses on sculling, how inclusivity shapes every decision they make, and how their boathouse has grown into a true community asset. A place not only for rowing, but also yoga, pickleball, and connection. This conversation is about leadership, inclusivity, and what happens when you design sport around people instead of limitations. It's also about how rowing can be a powerful tool for confidence, independence, and belonging. If you're interested in supporting RCIR, check out the show notes for more details. We hope you enjoy our conversation with Tim. All right. So like I said, Tim, our podcast is kind of casual. And so this is Kate. Kate and I rowed together at University of Buffalo way back when. And we started the podcast just how has it been a full year now? A year and a couple? Yeah,
I think you said it the last recording. It was over a year.
So it's been like a year and a couple months, and we just get together and we chat rowing. And so then when we have someone who decides to join us, we kind of have them kind of bring us back to when they first started rowing, when they first got introduced to it, and kind of give us their rowing origin story. So feel free to kind of share your story with us.
Okay, so I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and when I was a kid, there was a thing called the IRA regattas that were held on Onondaga Lake.
Yep, really remember that.
Yeah, just a glorified beer fest for underage drinking at the time. And that's where I first, witnessed rowing at that level. But I didn't really think much of it. It was intriguing. It was like, oh, there goes a boat. Okay, have another beer. Years later, when my daughter was, I think, becoming a freshman in high school, after having washed out of basketball and track and field hockey, she came home and said she wanted to try crew. I said, oh, that's good. Except she was studying for a bat mitzvah. So she and I decided to take sculling lessons together, fill the gap from her freshman year so she'd be ready her sophomore year. That's where it started. And then, of course, as a quasi-helicopter parent, I got involved and sucked into the board of Brighton Crew and became the chief fundraising. Of course, my daughter didn't take 10 years to get out of Brighton High School, but it took me 10 years to get out of Brighton Crew. And over the course of that time, somewhere around 2008, 2009, I started working with the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired Goodwill of Rochester. And as a fundraiser at work for United Way, we auctioned off sculling on the canal. And so people who were blind and visually impaired would bid on it, like a live auction. And then I would take them out rowing. And that's when Dennis Fraunheiser and I, put some people in a double, and were kind of blown away by the reaction of the experience that these folks had, which said another way, is we had grossly taken for granted what we were experiencing. We had grossly underestimated being in that moment and what it actually meant. And so we pondered the idea of creating, and since then it's kind of flourished into a center, what we refer to it as a therapeutic sculling center, where we don't focus on competition, we don't focus on meddling, we focus on building community and engaging the individual in rebuilding their sense of self, their confidence, their mental capacities, and mental health and wellness. And so that's how it kind of migrated. There's a bazillion stories associated with some 15 years of doing this, but that's kind of how I got into it and how it progressed. Mostly accidental, I guess.
I guess rowing kind of finds all of us, just kind of
Yeah.
grabs us at one point or another and then doesn't let go. So, but tell us more about like RCIR, and you mentioned it and its mission, and what are you guys currently working on right now? Give us like the full picture
Yeah.
of the plans going
Yeah.
forward into 2026.
Yeah, so addiction recovery, things like that out of the VA, they're the ones that I always say co-created what we have to this day. They helped us understand through interaction and relationship the benefits to their particular conditions at the time. And then we were able to take that set of awarenesses from sculling, and I should mention we don't sweep row, we just scull. Take those insights from sculling and leverage them into any population you can imagine that might have a barrier or a challenge that they're personally wrestling with. So that's pretty much what happened 2014, 15, 2016. We decided that if we were really going to try and do this work and scale it a little bit more than what we were doing in one adaptive single, the facilities were boathouse. And so what I'm sitting in right now is about 5,200 square feet of boathouse that is completely paid for. Our organization's totally debt free. And the work we do, the mission of creating community and inclusiveness for people with barriers, our tagline is no one pays and no one gets paid. So to this day, in some 15 years of the organization's existence, we've never paid a salary to anyone. It's all volunteer and community based. And the people who come don't pay. There are no fees or there are no members. So it's not a club. It truly, specifically, we said we're not going to be a club. We're going to be a community asset, which changes everything in terms of how we relate to other organizations who are maybe dealing with health and human services. So as an example, you talk about what have we done lately? Where are we going? We've been trying to reach out more to other organizations like Cancer Connect 1330, which is a wonderful little not-for-profit that works with youth between the ages of 13 and 30 who have battled cancer and have recovered or are in the throes. And their purpose, strangely enough, and I can read one of the cards. Let me grab something here. Sure.
Good.
We work with small groups of 6 or 7 people from their, audience of people that they serve. And what I love about this note that came in as a thank you, it says, Paige, Tim, RCIR team, I cannot thank you enough for hosting our 1330 members for such an amazing and impactful sculling series. So we do small, maybe 4 or 6 week series, couple nights during the week. This program did exactly what our mission aims for: build confidence and help our members discover new possibilities. Your entire team of volunteers was so incredibly patient and enthusiastic and looking forward to moving and to doing it again. So what was cool about that was when they stated what their objectives were, they pretty much aligned with what our mission is. But what I love about it is they never told us that. So they came, they experienced, they validated what their needs were that were aligned with ours. So that's kind of an MO that we use, is we try to stay very open to what is this particular person or group looking for. And can we use sculling as a metaphor or a medium to help them create that experience and take that away as they go back to the rest of their lives. So that's what we're doing right now. Like, we're trying to build rapport with the Monroe County Sheriffs. They have an embedded clinical psychologist who's really terrific. Her name's Kim Butler. And, a lot of people don't, well, maybe a lot of people do realize, but between EMTs, first responders, people like the sheriffs or the police, the amount of trauma that they see and witness in the course of a day or a week, is all over the map. And so she works directly with those folks in, like, for instance, the sheriff's department. And we've been looking at ways to create a space where those individuals who maybe experience trauma on a call or maybe at the county jail or whatever can come and find a little peace and restfulness and reconnect with parts of themselves that maybe they're looking to mend. So that's a little bit of what we're doing of late. We still have our sessions with some of the folks, some of the veterans that still row with us, always looking for more of that. Again, networking with other organizations like Sunny Mike or Rock City or whatever. We're always looking for ways to connect. So,
Wow, Tim, I have so many thoughts and questions, but the one thing I can't wait to ask is I am also on a board for a youth rowing team, and as you describe all of this work and you use the word we, I'm imagining about 100 people that there must be needed to make everything happen between the fundraising, the organizing. It sounds like, the communication with other programs and like safety and, everything like running a whole boathouse. Like, who is part of your team? And I know you said nobody gets paid. How do these people end up in, working with this organization?
Yeah, so this is probably going to wig you out. We have a board of 5 people. So it's myself, Dennis
Wow.
Fronheiser, who now lives in Virginia. He's our secretary. Jane Nassig is our treasurer. Beth O'Neill, Dan Bauer, and Jen Mason, who's one of the initial vets that we've rowed with for a lot of years now. So we have that board. And when we meet as a board, it's like maybe twice a year for an hour.
Wow.
And then everybody turns around and is just a volunteer. And then the volunteers, there's probably Pat Stahl, Katya Chavin, who you may know, Paige Baker. There's Susanna and her son Daniel, Rick Rizzo. It's a very small, tight network of people. There are several folks. Adam Foote, who you may know, Adam from GRC, his wife rows with us. And so it's a very small, tight network that we're always trying to add to. So I get on our webpage, I'll get requests from people who say, hey, I want to get back into, serving the community, volunteering. And so we'll bring them in. And if they know a little bit about rowing, then we'll teach them to properly scull. And then we teach them how we teach people to scull, which is not how most people teach people to scull. And then they'll become volunteers, and it's, you mentioned safety. Beth O'Neill from our board is kind of the point person on safety. Dan Bauer is like the point person on the facilities, the boathouse. So like Paige brought her 12-week-old baby to play pickleball in the boathouse a week ago, and I realized we didn't have a baby changing table in the restroom. So I'm sitting here, I get on Amazon, it's here 2 days later. Dan's got it on the wall 3 days later. So it's, that's just kind of how it rolls. It's like what needs to be done, who can do it now. The fundraising is really down now to, I'll tell you 2 things about fundraising. It's down now to like running the golf tournament in August. So we run one golf tournament. We'll net over 30 to 35,000 now without really trying. There's probably a dozen sponsors that are committed to what we're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
And, so between, $2,500 and $5,000, those folks keep this place going. Our annual budget is less than maybe $15,000. Most of that's insurances. We heat the building all year long for less than $2,000. One of the things that if Dennis were on the call, he would tell you that we talked early on back in 2015 and 16 was that we said, well, if we're passionate and we believe what we're doing, don't worry about the money, it'll come, which is a very weird thing to say, but we adopted that mentality and it worked and it still works. So I got a call a week ago, and it was Kim Butler from the sheriff's office. And she said, hey, did you know the sheriffs are not allowed to wear beards in Monroe County? And I go, no, why is that? She goes, this is going somewhere. I go, yeah, where? I go, what are you talking about? She goes, well, the lead sheriff, the head sheriff there, he doesn't let them wear facial hair. But in October, November, and December, for fundraising, if people kick in money, they can grow a beard for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I go, yeah. She goes, yeah. So we did, breast cancer awareness in October. We did somebody in November, but they decided to pick your organization for December. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great. I'm thinking you get a few $100. She goes, it's 2 weeks ago. We got $3,500 for you. Like,
Wow.
okay, great. So, they're going to show up in January with a check for like $5,000 or something. And then we'll put it to use. So we don't fret about it. We just keep telling the impact of stories and people telling their stories, and the money shows up. Very strange. It's not your typical rowing.
Yeah. That's
Spot.
not how it's like necessarily with youth sport.
It could be, but I think Adrian may know this. I have a master's in org theory and behavior from my early days in the 90s. One of the things Dennis and I talked a lot about was watching the dysfunction of organizations. And in this case, for me, just another sphere to look at was rowing, youth rowing, masters rowing, and watching that. And so we had, before we got on the track to build this place and grow it, we talked a lot about what was congruent and incongruent with organizational life in rowing relative to what we wanted our mission to be, and so, and you've been in boathouses. There's the first boat, the second boat, the third boat, who's wrong, who's rushing the slide, and all of that conversation that goes in the system is either helping or not advancing the mission of the organization, the purposes of the people there, the coaches, etc. I'm not saying this to be snobby or anything. It's just a matter of organizational life. These things happen. So if they're happening, how do you design the organization in such a way where you can lower that probability of that being an issue? Strangely enough, one of the things that we bumped into in 2014 and 15 when we were working with veterans was they said something that was really impactful. They were like, yeah, these organizations are teaching us to do, archery and fly fishing and sailing and downhill skiing. And then when the program's over, none of us can afford to do it.
Yeah.
And we were like, what is that? Maybe we should be listening to this, And we did. And so we said, hey, how can we pull this off? And that was just one of the design criteria over the years that we pursued from like 2014 to 2018.
So you said you don't have members, but so are you saying that you have people that do like a program that's like a teaching, like a learn to row, and then they're able to come back and still participate?
So let's say it's May 30th and it's our first Saturday on the water. A communication email goes out to like over 100 people that we've been working with for years. And some of them don't come anymore. And we've asked them, do you still want to receive the emails? Yes. So that's a statement about connectivity and community. They want to know what's going on. So on Sunday, we're going to have a little 3-hour get together here, and people that haven't rowed will show up. But anyway, the communication goes out. Somebody new who maybe was in the tanks with us in January and February, or maybe not, will show up. And so we'll look at the spectrum of who's where on the continuum, and we build boats from there. People that have progressed that can be in an adaptive single, or someone who's in the first day is going to go in an adaptive double with me or Beth or whoever. So we'll go out on the water, we'll just go. And everybody is kind of like working from where they are. So we don't say, oh, this is the Learn to Row group, and we're going to only do Learn to Row from this window of time. It's like, that wouldn't work for us because we don't have enough volunteers to do all that.
Yeah.
So we kind of go the other way and say, if you show, you row, that's kind of one of our taglines. If you show, you row. If you can't row and you want to go on the launch and help with safety and monitor, great. If you bring a partner or a family member or a spouse or a kid, it's 12, we put a life vest on them, they can watch from the safety launch. If you want to stay at the boathouse and weed weeds, some parents do that. Anybody that can help carry oars or help carry a boat or help us wash the boats afterwards that didn't row is, so it just becomes, what it looks like when you have if you're in college and you know how people just move. It's kind of like a anthill, right? Everybody seems to just move to where the work is. And so we do that. But we don't have designated spots to say, oh, you're an intermediate rower or you're an advanced rower. It's like, when we huddle up after washing all the boats and everybody talks about their morning or whatever we rode, we go around in a circle and people talk about what they were working on. What did they feel like before they came? How do they feel now? What happened on the water that they wanted to share? And so you get everybody's voice in the system before they leave about, okay, how'd this go for you? So that's kind of what our programs look like. If we have like a 1330, that might be a totally dedicated thing where those are the only people that are going to be there with our volunteers. So in that case, we want to create the boundary where they have that commonality of their cancer experiences so they can support each other in that. And when they go back, they can support each other in that. Now, those people can come row anytime they want with the other ones, but we wouldn't go the other way. We wouldn't say, oh, hey, we got 4 veterans, come on, row with 1330. We wouldn't do that. But so we kind of manage the events accordingly, if that makes any sense.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Are
cool.
you connecting with other programs that are similar to this across the country and sharing notes or how does
That's
that
a
work?
great question. For almost every year that Freedom Rows existed at US Rowing, we were a member of. So I think Jen Mason, who's on our board, came across Freedom Rows and went up to Boston to sweep row with US Rowing and Freedom Rows, which was dedicated to veterans on the water. And there are sites all over the country. And we would get on, Zoom calls with them periodically and stay connected with Deb Ehrenberg, who was phenomenal at US Rowing at the time, managing what was about, I think, between $500,000 and $800,000 annual grant from the VA, which they discontinued this year, which is tragic because they did an audit on the grant performance. They crushed every imaginable component of it, and then 2 weeks later were told they weren't going to renew the grant, which was stupid. Anyway, but that's the administration that went in there. So over the course of those years, there were, several boats that were purchased by Freedom Rows and the grant in US Rowing. And the hook on that was, well, this equipment is the property of the grant. And I kind of chuckled like, yeah, you're sending boats all over the country. And if this thing ever goes away, who's going to come get them? Where are you going to put them? Who's going to sell them? Where are you going? So sure enough, they when the grant did expire, they basically said, keep doing what you're doing, which is what we were going to do anyway. So how did we get on this? You were asking about
Just connecting with other groups that are similar.
So we are networked like that. So over the course of those years, through Facebook, Sherry McLeod, there are people around the country down in the DC area that we know we can reach out to. Dennis has done that as he's gone down to live in the Virginia area. So we're always doing that. One of my favorites is a woman, I think her name's Andrea, and I'm forgetting her last name, but she was on the US rowing team. And then she ended up in Cooperstown at what they call Otsego area rowing.
Yep.
And she came up to visit us and watched what we do, and actually rode with one of our vets a couple times in some venues, because we don't go to regattas. It's like we'll tell people, well, if you're up for it, we'll help you connect with people to get you there, but we don't have the bandwidth to like travel to Philadelphia. So it's like, yeah, we'll encourage, like Simon Rizzo, this is a good story. He started with us when he was, I think, an 8th grader at Brighton, and he was in the modified sculling program. And I don't know who the young lady was. I don't think it was you, Kate. Someone called me and said, "Hey, I've got this kid. He was born with the limb that kind of is cut off around the knee, and he doesn't have a lower limb, and I think his right leg, and he can't keep the boat going straight. And I've got all these kids on the river, and I don't know what to do, and not sure he can do this." And I said, "Well, have his mother bring him over to our boathouse on Saturday." So they show up, and I put him in an adaptive single, and his mother walked away, and within 10 minutes he was going straight as an arrow. And I'm on the dock, and I'm just talking to him, and his mother comes over and says, "What'd you do?" And so I told him to stop moving his head. And she looks at me and says, "What?" I said, "Well, he's moving his head. Every time he moves his head, the boat turns. He'd look over his shoulder, the boat would turn. I said, "It's got nothing to do with his leg or the absence of a leg." I said, "It's fundamental. It's any sport, where your head goes, your body goes. And every force has an equal and opposite, reaction." She was like blown away. She's like, "Really?" I'm going, "Yeah." So I said, "We'll get him so he can go back and row with the Brighton kids." I said, "But if you let him row with us every summer," I said, "by the time he's a senior, he'll be able to compete in states in a single if you want him to." And she was like, "What?" So if you talk to his mom and their family, and they will tell you what being a part of sculling, rowing, RCIR, what it's done for his confidence, and how he views himself. And to me, the more important thing is how people learn to view him, because he doesn't really show up with a disability. His abilities, as we know, are just different. And so he ended up going, I don't know where he went to do this, Tennessee or Texas or someplace, but he got a new articulating prosthesis in the ankle. And he showed up this summer all pumped up about wanting to relearn how to scull with a prosthesis from his stump down to the foot stretcher. And so he worked his way through that, and he's got a beautiful stroke. I mean, when he's on the water, you don't have a clue. You would never know. And so anyway, those are the kinds of stories. I don't know how I got on this one, but
That's a good story.
So that's it's person-centered, and a lot of what we do. Oh, I know. We were talking about networking. So we do that sort of thing, and we'll work with other organizations that want to try and incorporate adaptive rowing. And it's really difficult because mostly what we hear from around the country is it's another thing in the boathouse. So, you've got your weekend warrior masters, and then you got your high school kids, and then you got the college crowd that's really into competing and wants to get into the Olympics. And then you've got this thing over here called adaptive rowing. And the boundaries that are set up tend not to crisscross real well. And so that's part of our design, is to say, we're not going to have to deal with those things because we haven't put them inside the boundary. It makes sense? So it's not good. I don't want people that are listening to think what I'm saying is good or bad or better or worse. It's different. And it's designed with, purposeful thought. It's not better or worse purposeful thought. It's different. It's what's appropriate for the mission, and what we're trying to achieve. So that's stop there. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations if I don't think we have anything like this in the Albany area, but like if people wanted to explore the idea of starting something in their area, where would be the place to start, is I guess my question.
Well, how we started was literally having access to a double. I mean, that's how we started, with doubles. And we didn't need pontoons or anything. If we could get the person to the dock and in the double, and then people into a quad, you could start at any boathouse.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start with one or two or three people and go from there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we said in 2008, yeah, let's build a boathouse.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a clue. It's an ongoing journey that people who are passionate about, just like anyone, can pursue. And it's for us, it was always about, are we working to help someone change the direction of their life, a person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you can set out and pursue something like that. That's quite a privilege. you know
Yeah.
we didn't have to say, oh, we've got to make payroll,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we've got to meet New York State labor guidelines. We don't have an HR department, and we don't have to do payroll, taxes, or 1099s.
Mm-hmm.
So we consciously said, we're keeping that crap out of here. It's not going to serve the mission. So how do we do what we need to do? What has to, like safety, safety is like not negotiable,
Right.
because it ties to our insurances. It ties to, you know, individuals' well-beings, so we've built a pretty robust safety approach to what we do. But we're not doing payroll taxes. Anyway, so yeah, people can get started, and it's not like, I mean, if you went down to DC and Potomac Rowing, or Philly, uh, Pittsburgh, Chicago, out west, there's some great programs out on the West Coast, uh, in Washington and Oregon. Uh, Everybody's kind of pursuing it their own way. It's not like we've cornered the market and have a monopoly. It's everyone's doing cool stuff. It's just, how are they going about it, and what are the challenges and barriers that they have to overcome. So, I think if I had any recommendation, it would be to really explore what the word inclusive means.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
because if you're going to try to be inclusive, and that's why we consciously, we put it in the name of the organization for two reasons. One was New York State didn't give us our 501c3 designation until we added the word inclusive, because they said there were too many rowing clubs in Rochester. And we go, well, we're not a club. Now what? So we put that word in there, but it also is kind of the North Star of what we're trying to do. It's like, that's the guidance, is, are we always finding ways to be inclusive? And I don't think it's easy to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
It's work. It's conscious work, and it's not work you get paid for, but it's
Mm-hmm.
very rewarding.
How has that term been expanded as you've made that intentional thought for your organization?
Um, well, so I guess, for instance, I said we started out working with veterans. Actually, the first few people were blind and visually impaired. But in
Mm-hmm.
2014, we consciously said we're going to work with veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, Daniel and his parents showed up on the shores under the 390 bridge at GRC and said, hey, this is our 12-year-old Daniel with cerebral palsy. And we were in Boston, and we saw people rowing, and, community rowing has this program. And we were thinking that maybe if he was in a boat, it would help build his dexterity, holding on to the oar. And it was October, and I looked at him. I said, well, I have no idea. I said, but the season's almost over. I said, why doesn't he show up in the tanks in January, and we'll see what we can do?
Mm-hmm.
I'd never worked with anybody that had cerebral palsy, And I told her, I said, if we figure this out, it'll be a function of how he figures it out with us, because we don't know.
Mhm.
And then Daniel taught us a lot of things about, and his mom taught us a lot of things about what it's like to have cerebral palsy, where you're not confined to a wheelchair and you have a lot of your cognitive skills and your verbal skills, but your gait is affected. Maybe one leg might be shorter than the other, and you don't have the same range of motion in one hand as you do with the other. And she was telling us that that for people with those attributes of cerebral palsy, there's not a lot of support,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of programming. There's not a lot of whatever. To her credit, she reminds me of my mom and my brother Pat. You know, she's got Daniel into soccer and she got Daniel into this. But he came to rowing, and I still have videos of him from the very first times that he was in the tanks with us. And I get choked up saying this. His mom said, you know, we're not sure Daniel's going to be able to go away to college because we're not sure he'll be able to take care of himself, like, you know, buttoning his shirt and putting his gloves on. You know, yeah, stuff I never had to think about with my daughter, you know.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that last year Daniel graduated from Harvard, and he's now at the Einstein School of Medicine in New York City. He's going to be a
Wow.
doctor, you know. so
Good for him.
so so back to your question of how is it manifest? How is inclusive manifested? Well,
Mhm.
that's one example of someone showing up with a challenge that we don't know. We could have just as easily said, "Oh, we don't work with people with cerebral palsy."
Mhm.
Well, Daniel opened the door for Anna. Anna had some similar challenges, and boy, we leveraged what we learned from Daniel. If you met Anna now, you wouldn't believe it. Her mother and father would come and watch on the launch, and she didn't start until she was 30. You know, Daniel started when he was 12. Her parents were blown away by what she's doing now, and the range of motion that she's developed over time. Where a lot of people in therapy, uh, you know, physical therapists would be like, well, you know, that's the range of motion I guess you've got. And so now you come out and you put an oar in each hand and you figure out how to row up and down the river in an adaptive single. And and all of a sudden, you know, that one side of your brain is firing a little differently because you're isolated and you don't have any other choice but to figure out what you can do with your current range of motion to build a little bit more connectivity from your brain and your neurons firing your nerves down to your limb. Uh, we didn't know anything about that. Now we know a little bit, you know, probably enough to be dangerous. And then that opened up, you know, one of our vets with MS. You know, we've had people come subsequently with MS. And then we started doing yoga. I'll tell you this story real quick. So a woman showed up with MS who was rowing with us, and then we did yoga. So first night of yoga that we had, she brings her 12 or 13-year-old son, and they're sitting around the circle, and the person leading the session says, okay, we're just going to start by going around the circle and saying, why are you here tonight? You know, so she goes to the kid first, sitting next to his mother, says, my mom's had MS. She was diagnosed about a year ago, and I need to find ways to be as supportive as possible.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
So, you know, that's not like what we set out to do,
Yeah.
but
Right.
I think being committed. Now, we never told her to bring her kid to yoga, but the kid
Mhm.
shows up and he has this incredible moment, you know. So, you know, and I think if I kept going, you know, it's like each individual, you know, we had another mom show up with uh, a child with gender dysphoria, and strangely enough, she had rowed in sweep rowing. It was kind of funny, and the first time the family showed up, the child didn't get out of the car, and the mom rowed. And then the next time the kid got out and participated. And probably the third time, the younger brother decided, hey, I need to get involved in it. So now the whole family's rowing, and we'd be on the dock and the mother would start directing the kids. And I looked at her and I said, you're just a rower, you know? And so she kind of got the message. And so then we had to like figure out, okay, we got to keep her over here because that's creating this funky dynamic with the kids who are already in a funky thing. And she was going through a divorce and she was moving to Texas and the kids were going to go move to California with the father. And what was going on out there was unbelievable. And so, we're like hanging in there with it. And the last time they came to row, I put them in a quad together. And I had the mother in stroke and then the two children and then me and Bao. And we went out and rowed together. And it was the last time they're going to be together.
Oh.
Came off the water and we used that quad and the experience of rowing in singles and doubles and building on it. And we talked about the interdependence of what does it mean to be a functioning unit? How do you get to become interdependent if you don't have independence first? How do you build your independence without throwing away the opportunity for interdependence as a family? So this is the debrief we're doing after several weeks of this family unit. It was amazing. So again, that probably wouldn't have happened in 2013, but fast forward 10 years and you start to build off this pursuit of how do you be more inclusive. And of course, there's a lot of judgmental stuff that has to go, and there's a lot of addressing things like, Mom, you're just a rower. You're kind of getting in the way, Mom. So was that a good enough answer? I don't want to babble too much.
I think so. That was really good.
Well,
Yeah.
we started this with it was a great question is what would you recommend? And I go backwards, so we'll just button this up. It's how to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
And how to pursue being inclusive. So that's what I would recommend. Good luck. It's a pursuit. It's a pursuit.
Yeah, but I mean, I enjoy all your stories, and I know I can tell that there's just like hundreds more. So thank you for all you're doing and sharing it with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for doing this. It's pretty cool.
And Tim, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or the club or to donate? Give us all the details. So if people want to be involved, they can.
Sure. Yep. Don't use the word club. No.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Okay. Community asset. I'll just say one more thing about that. When we try to network and work with others and we tell them, there's no charge. If you just come, we've got everything we need. It's a community asset. And that's one of the things that people don't realize about 501c3s. Like in New York State, or if I was in Massachusetts, and I used to always tell Dennis this, I would remind him that we don't own any of this. It's the property of New York State, which would absolutely kill Dennis. He hated that. Oh my God, we've done all this for the state of New York. Why did we do that? So it's a community asset. But anyway, to get a hold of us, it's the easiest thing is to just go to rcir.org. And on that webpage, you can do everything from reach out and send a message to me. All the emails will come through myself and our board members. And I'm pretty fast. I get an email and I'm pretty much responding within a matter of hours. If you put a phone number in there, I'll probably just call you back and then I can give you my phone number. My email, I don't know if it's on the webpage, but you'll get my email when I reply to you. The donate button's there. The videos are there. The programming is there, our events and stuff. Our newest thing in the winter is when we built the boathouse, we put most of the racks for the boats on wheels. So what you can't see, because I never hooked up my camera properly, which I got to do, is that we now have a full-size pickleball court inside the boathouse.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we're using pickleball and yoga as additional ways to connect with people and utilize the asset during the winter.
Oh, that's cool.
So anyway, yeah. So that's how you can get a hold of us. Best way is through the website, rcir.org, and go from there. We'll reach out and connect.
Tim, if you send me some of the pictures, what I'll do is I'll put them in at this part of the podcast. If you send me some pictures of just the indoor pickleball court and
Right.
the
Right.
boat rolled off to the side. Yeah, I think people would love to
Yeah.
see that. That's a really
Yeah, we got bird netting up to protect the boats from the balls flying around. I
oh
hit a ball the other night and it got hooked. It got stuck on top of the garage door opener at 14 feet in the air. So that's pretty. Uh, yeah, I'll try and do that. And then I've got. I just bought a putting green and a putting trainer. So we have
Oh,
golf balls. And when the DEC is not looking, I'll hit golf balls across the creek from the garage door.
well, it's training for your yearly fundraising
Well, yeah,
event.
and it's another way of being inclusive of all sports imaginable
That's all right.
in a boathouse. So,
and they have a gorgeous space, Kate. I mean, it's just really, really beautiful. And I mean, great equipment, wonderful people. It's a really inviting space and it's set up
yep,
so well. Like a lot of really great thought went into it. And maybe Kate, when you're in town,
Yeah,
yep.
have to come see.
Anytime, yeah,
we'll come down to maybe we'll volunteer
sure,
Yeah.
for maybe a
yeah,
Sunday or Saturday or something like that. I'll keep you
yeah.
posted
When are
when
you
weather
going
gets
to be around? In the spring or what? You're in Albany?
Well, we have to make plans. Yeah, at some point. I don't
Okay.
have any plans to get out there yet, but
yeah.
I'm in
yeah.
Albany occasionally. Where do you row out of Albany at? ARC?
No, actually, we're in Clifton Park, so we're up,
Oh,
we share a boathouse with Burnt Hills. We're on the Mohawk River in
yeah.
Alpause,
Okay.
near
Yep.
Glenville.
Yep. We actually had a facility where I worked. It was at Glenville, one of the military bases there.
Oh
Yeah, so
yeah.
I'm familiar with there. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, anytime. And whether it's a weekend or a weekday or a weeknight, it doesn't matter. We'll come over, we can get on the water. If it's just us, we can go out and row. You can see what the Genesee River's like. Um, we have a little creek that's about 250, 300 meters long from where the boathouse is to the river.
Hmm.
And it's very still. So with beginners, it's just perfect to,
That's
teach
nice.
them. That's something we didn't really talk about was how we go about teaching.
Mm.
Yeah,
But I'll
maybe
get you out
for
of
the
time.
next, if you want to join
Sure.
us again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Just
We could.
as a breadcrumb for that.
Hmm.
Dennis and I took in Adrian, John Burnfield, right?
Yep.
John is like a rowing icon in the area. And late in life, he bumped into a college sweetheart and ended up remarrying. But before they got married, she's from Georgia, and they came to Rochester, and we took them out in a quad, and we had the boat rowing by fours in less than 25 minutes. And John Burnfield came off the water after having been in rowing for like 40 years. And this is what he said to us: "How the hell did you do that?" And we're like, "Well, we'll tell you." And he looked at us and he was like, "That's the exact opposite of how I coached for years."
Mm.
And the difference is a wet your whistle is we focused on small motor movements of the fingers and hands,
Mhm.
and he focused on large muscle movements of the legs and the quads and the back and the swing.
Hmm.
And he was blown away. So,
Hmm.
but again, that was an example of being inclusive, where the question we had more than several instances where people would ask us a question, and we would like listen and go, "Well, we're not sure. Let's talk about that." And
Hmm.
that's how we got a lot more clarity into what we were doing, and how we were going about it. So anyway, okay.
Amazing.
Well, it's almost Christmas. That's our Christmas present.
Yes.
That's fun.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. I'll have my camera next time so we can take a
Okay.
tour of
Oh,
the
no worries
building.
about the camera. It's absolutely
Hmm.
perfect. A lot of people just listen to the
Yeah,
podcast as the
yeah,
audio, so that's
right.
absolutely
So,
perfect. And
so
next
when
time
you,
we
yeah,
can get together and maybe I'll pull Dennis in too.
That'd be
maybe,
great. Yeah.
maybe at some point, I don't know, we could do it soon, like maybe some point in
Yeah.
January.
Sure.
I can
Yeah,
send
anytime.
an email between the four of
Yep.
us,
Yep.
and we could do another chat, and we can catch up on everything that we were chatting about in this one.
Yep.
So yeah, but thanks so
Awesome.
much for
Anytime.
for chatting with us. We appreciate it
Yep.
so much, and
Yep.
we'll work on another time when we'll get you and Dennis together, and
Yeah.
we'll get
We'll
all
love it.
the stories too.
That'd be
So,
fun.
Sorry to run.
Okay.
I got someone here that's just stopping
Okay.
in, but
Yeah,
bye.
bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
thank you,
bye-bye.
Tim.
Bye.
See you
Yeah,
later. Bye
see ya.
bye, everybody.